Hello, everyone. I'm Becca, dietitian by trade, mom 24/7, wife from the start, and when there's a few extra hours in the day, you might find me hitting the trails or on horseback.
And I'm Kara, a therapist to women, a mom to a boy, an entrepreneur, mountain junkie, and a postpartum runner.
And this is Fit for a Queen, a podcast that's devoted to the female athlete wanting to balance the teeter-totter of all the things we desire out of life as women: performance, health, intellect, and taking time for self, even if we only get 1 minute out of the day.
We're so excited to be bringing you the queens in the athletic world who have done just that. Okay, ladies, take a seat at your thrones, grab your crowns, and welcome to Fit for a Queen.
Well, welcome back, queens. Today we have a king in the house. We are with Adam McAboy. Adam has privately coached and mentored many young athletes and has worked as a coach in the Novato, California mountain biking teams. He enjoys working to understand the individual athlete's strengths and vulnerabilities and developing an individualized plan according to the needs of the young person. He finds great joy in watching young people develop not only in a more fulfilled and healthier athlete, but also into stronger, more complete and balanced individuals. It is to this end that Adam has joined forces with fellow Cal alumni and Olympic swimmer Mark Henderson to create the Athlete Village, a business that focuses on making an athlete's experience in sports more rewarding and fun by offering valuable, relevant sports information. Adam's drive and enthusiasm for the task at hand, coupled with his strong ability to bring people together to communicate and create effectively, will help the Athletes Village achieve its goal of inspiring and educating young people to obtain their potential in sports and in life. Currently, 70% of kids who start organized sports in the United States will quit by the age of 13. Even more disturbingly, a child under the age of 17 is brought to the ER in the United States every 25 seconds with a sports-related injury, a stat that many experts believe can be significantly cut by injury prevention education. The Athletes Village is working to change this sad reality and to ensure that all levels of young athletes, their parents and coaches have a fun, healthy, character-building sports experience. Ultimately, the Athletes Village aims to create athletes for life. Well, welcome, Adam. So excited to hear more about this, and it was kind of fun. I learned about Athletes Village from Samantha Livingstone, and then I get on, and sure enough, there's been several fellow Fit for Queens that are part of the Athletes Village. So obviously, you're developing quite a village.
Yeah, we're very proud of it, and I just want to say thanks for having me on. I'm looking forward to this conversation.
Well, great. So let's kind of start with how did Athletes Village come about with you and your fellow Cal friend?
Well, Mark was a very successful athlete. He won an Olympic gold medal in '96. I was a moderately successful athlete. I earned a college scholarship for track and field to Cal, and I ended up getting injured and not, fulfilling my dreams, I suppose. But Mark and I were talking several years ago and realized that there were a lot of people who were asking us about advice for their kids or themselves as it related to sports. They were seeking expert or so-called expert information about, in my case, running. Friends would ask me if I would talk to their kids who were going out for track and field or cross country. I was more than happy to do that, evaluate form, talk to kids about my struggles and triumphs as an athlete. And Mark was getting the same experience as people learned that he was a swimmer. His kids are swimming. People say, "Oh, you're an Olympic swimmer. Hey, can you talk to my kids about this, about swimming, etc." So we saw that people were very, very much like sponges when it came to soaking up information as it related to their kids' sports, wanting that expert information. One other side of it is that Mark was asked to coach his daughter's soccer team, and he never even played soccer 1 minute of his life growing up in Maryland. So he was trying to figure out what to do to help 7-year-olds play soccer, and he finds himself, in a long search, YouTube videos, Google searching, trying to figure out what the best thing to do is. And he was craving that same expert information. So that was sort of the initial conversation that we had about that spawned the idea for the Athletes Village. One other side of it is that we felt that there wasn't really a good, I shouldn't say we felt, there isn't really a good platform where former athletes and current athletes can give back and stay connected to the next generation of people in their sport. So we felt that by building this community, we would solve both of those problems.
Oh, absolutely. And that kind of was one of the next questions was the forum not only includes experts, but athletes. And as you and I talked on the phone previously, transition out of sport is such an area that I'm passionate about. But, you don't want to pull them completely away from sport. And I know there was an article on Steve Nash that was out yesterday that was saying, like, it's been 5 years and I'm still like learning and struggling. So I think this is a great way that kind of gives them support. So have you had feedback from former athletes on how this helped them with the transition?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people are just looking for, I just think as human beings, it's good to know that other people go through the same struggles that you go through. It's comforting to know that we're all part of a greater, we all have things in common that bring us together. But as athletes, a lot of times we don't feel comfortable showing our weaknesses. So some of the struggles that we would experience as athletes or former athletes, we keep them to ourselves. And it's the Athletes Village. Again, if you go and read the content there, you'll see that many athletes, a lot of them are going through the same struggles that you may be going through. So as you transition out of sports, I mean, it relates to so many things besides transition out of sports, but that is a very critical one, because people who identify as athletes their whole lives now all of a sudden are not feeling like they're identifying that way. So to know what other athletes have done to get through that, to know that other athletes feel the same way, other people feel the same way, it's just a very comforting place and community to go to help you through that transition.
Sure.
One of my favorite contributors is a psychologist, Johanna McShane, who is a frequent visitor to the site, and that's her focus in her career is athlete transitions. So she just has so much great content and so much wonderful support for our community as they move on to that next phase of their lives.
Love it. I'll have to connect with her.
Yeah, I'd be happy to introduce you.
Yeah. I know you also mentioned that you like the fact that you can have all these different perspectives, and you feel that's an important part of the village. Can you kind of speak to that, why you think that's helpful for the athlete, the coach, the parent?
I absolutely do feel that way. There's so many, there's not one frame that fits everybody. So what works for athlete A isn't necessarily the right thing for athlete B or C, and it doesn't necessarily translate across the sport either. So I think that having multiple opinions, and that's the great thing about our format, it's a Q&A format. So you can post a question and you might see in some cases there are 20 answers to that question. And they all provide a perspective that can help people. So, the easiest example is to go to, Tiger Woods. Everybody knows he started playing golf as, a very young child, and his dad pushed him, and that was his sole focus, and he became a great golfer. But there are so many athletes that didn't focus solely on one sport until college even. And I think that was a mistake that I made in high school. Looking back on it now, I wouldn't change anything, but I think I could have furthered my career as a track athlete if I didn't focus so hard on it in high school and maybe stayed playing multiple sports and turned my focus in college. Kate Grace won the Olympic trials and was an Olympic finalist in the 800 in the last Olympics. And she didn't she ran track and field in high school, but she didn't focus on it solely until she was in college. And so that's just an example of two total different approaches to something. And both of them led to a successful athlete. Although in Tiger Woods' case, there are some other issues there. So
yeah. It'd be so great to be able to interview him. I'm curious now looking big picture, what he would say to young athletes as well.
Yeah, it would be an interesting interview.
So Tiger, if you're out there, we would love to interview.
Do it, Tiger.
So walk me through, if somebody goes to the Athlete Village website, how they can use it, just kind of the layout.
Well, the site is free to our users. You can sign up easily, make an account, set up your profile. It's really fun. You can follow anybody on the site can follow anybody else, and then you'll get notifications about when they're active on the site. You can search, you can customize your profile to the sports and categories that you're interested in. So you could follow, for example, swimming, nutrition, psychology, and coaching. And then you'd have a customized feed that would meet the things that you are interested in. There is a search bar at the top, so you can search topics or questions. You can also post questions, which we welcome, and the community will quickly answer them for you. There's also a way to tag experts or other users. When you do ask a question, if you do that, they'll get notified that somebody wants to hear their opinion about something. So,
and I believe you have an option they can ask anonymously, right?
Yeah, I think that's one of the most important features on the site. Like I referenced a few minutes ago, as athletes, we're supposed to be strong and leaders of our team or leaders in a competition. I mean, that's what we're taught at a young age. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that, but it also makes it difficult to show weakness. So if you're struggling, I mean, in a lot of high school athletes are growing so much, they struggle with just the natural weight gain of growing when you're in high school. And that's something that's really hard to, it can be difficult for a lot of people as their bodies change to accept that and to be comfortable with it and to be confident with it as an athlete. So, but it's also not something that people are comfortable just going out and say, hey, I'm not comfortable with this. Or if it's not weight gain, it can be some other element, like I'm feeling burned out and I'm not really having fun competing right now. Well, a lot of athletes may be feeling that way, but who's really talking about it? So to be able to go to the Athlete Village and post a question anonymously, it's a safe place to do that and get support that you need. And I really feel, it breaks my heart a lot when I see athletes committing suicide or going through, terrible bouts of depression. You probably know the story of Maddie Holloran, the runner from, I think it was about 5 or 6 years ago, who killed herself, and the cyclist from Stanford, Kelly Caitlin, I think her name was. I feel like there are answers out there for people, and that there's just not necessarily a good, safe platform for them to go to get these answers, and at least kick off getting support and getting help. So that's why, to me, the anonymous ask feature is so important to the Athletes Village. And the community is so positive and supportive that I feel like it's a very healthy place for athletes to go to get support, help, all of the psychological support that they need, really. And anything else, but I mean, we're talking about that right now.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I was just impressed by all the variety of experts on there, athletes on there, different athletes. I mean, like skiing or wrestling. So any athlete, any coach. And I really like the fact that you brought up the coaching part, because so many times youth coaches don't get any guidance at all. And having been a college athlete, I just thought, well, I can step right into coaching. No.
Right.
It was a lot of learning curve, especially when it's your own kid. So thank God I'm surrounded by amazing clinicians that I could reach out to and ask for personal advice. So this sounds like a great resource for the coaches as well.
Yeah, and as you mature through life, you get comfortable in your own skin. You get comfortable asking people for help. And it's just harder when you're younger, and it's also harder when you're being judged for something. A coach of a little league baseball team or softball team has the eyes of all the parents. So
Right.
it's pretty easy to put up a quick defense against that and not be receptive to new ideas and changes. But again, the Athletes Village is a place you can go and get advice from people who've been there and done that.
Love it.
Yeah, it's fun. It's really, I think another thing that's really interesting is how our experts in our community love to get on and support people and help them. It feels good to help, but people have a lot of really valuable experience, and this is a great place for them to share it with a community that is specifically interested in what they have to say.
Right. I mean, we get into this field because obviously we love sports, but that compassion piece, and I always say my ultimate job is to put myself out of business. I want to feel like there's a place where we don't need to have disordered eating in sport, and we're properly nourished and we're having fun, but obviously we're a far ways off that. But here's another great resource. So, Adam, anything big new coming up with Athletes Village in the future?
Well, the next things that we are working on is really creating a marketplace platform for our expert users, Olympic athletes or athletes who are training for the Olympics, often don't have time to have a job that really supports them.
Mm-hmm.
And, even though they may get a little bit of money from the U.S. Olympic Committee, it's not really enough to sustain. So, for example, Mark, my co-founder, when he was training for the 96 Olympics, he was also bartending after practice. So he would, be working at a bar, serving drinks and food until, midnight, and then he'd be in the pool at 5 a.m. And it's just a very difficult way to maximize your training. So as we move forward and are working on building our marketplace, this is a way that our athletes and experts can go to, monetize their experience to some degree and supplement their income. That's our ultimate goal, so that they can focus more on their training.
Definitely. And I think, our culture sees some of these professional athletes that live, the life of luxury, but that's probably like the 2%. And I learned that when I first started my profession and was working with this football player, and I mentioned something about going to the grocery store, and he's like, well, really, I can't, because he was having to do things that he could heat up in the microwave and was in like a hotel room that you rent by the month because he was part of the training team. So he never knew if he was going to get cut or not. So it was like, oh, wow, we're going to have to really think creatively on how we can make sure that you're properly nourished, but also things that don't have to refrigerate and that you can heat up. So it was just kind of a humbling, like, oh yeah, you're in the NFL, but you don't have the NFL salary yet.
Exactly. And then if you think about it, I mean, NFL athletes are fantastic athletes, but so are Olympic swimmers and Olympic track athletes and volleyball players and soccer players. Well, soccer is growing a lot. The amount of money that people are making doing these sports, especially, Olympic swimmers, once you get out of an Olympic year, it's hard to name, more than 4 or 5 unless you're really following the sport. So these guys are working so hard, and they're every bit the athlete, of a football player or basketball player, in my humble opinion, but they aren't able to monetize that. So it's a struggle, and it'd be nice to see a platform or see our marketplace grow and be able to support that.
Agree. So, Adam, in all this busyness, how do you live out the Phit philosophy, trying to balance performance, health, intellect, and taking time for self?
Yeah, well, performance to me is about, I'm no longer an athlete, so I try to, stay, in my own mind a little bit competitive. I ride my bike right now to stay fit, and I have a Peloton bike, which I love riding, and I can get a little bit of competitive spirit out of that. And so that's something that's, I need that in my life a little bit. I think that health overall is really about a balanced life. And it would include all of the parts of the acronym of Phit. I think that, I did experience as an athlete, like being singularly focused, and that had its rewards. But now that I'm older, I just feel that having balance in life is critical. So I try to spend some time, with my, family and friends. I spend some time exercising. I try to stay interested in learning. And that's part of what's been rewarding about building the Athletes Village, is that it's been a challenge every step of the way, where I'm learning every day as I do it, and pushing myself. Anyhow, and then health also, eating healthfully, being active, staying interested, having time with friends, family, and then setting time aside for myself, which I believe is one of the last parts of it. But intellectually, as I just said, is part of my overall philosophy of staying healthy is just push myself and stay interested and stay open-minded and always be willing to learn and listen, and probably talk too much sometimes.
No.
And what's the last one?
Time for self, which you said sometimes carve
Oh yeah,
in.
time for self. Yeah, I just it can be hard. I know that everybody gets very busy. It can be very difficult to find time for self, but to me, if I can get time on my bike, it doesn't have to be every day. It can be once a week or a couple of times a week. But once I get out and pedal, I find that it's almost like a meditative experience for me, where my stresses just kind of fall away, and I really can just spend time with myself and my own mind.
Yeah.
And soak up the beauty of the forest that we live near, and when I get back, I think it's a really good way to reach that. So, like I said, it doesn't have to be every day. It doesn't have to be, super consistent that I'm doing that, but I do think it's important for me. And if it's not time to ride a bike, I can get that out of hiking or paddleboarding, or, going for walks with my wife. I mean, I think it's just a really good way to just sort of get out and sort of clear your head.
Right. I love how you said stay interested and stay open-minded. I think when we do that, we kind of stay in tune with ourselves, which is really important. It's when we get disconnected that we get kind of closed off. And so that's when I start to see some of the health issues come in for a lot of my clients. So I really appreciate you saying that.
Yeah, I do. I mean, I think that's really, I think it's a really critical thing in life, because when you stop growing and learning, then where are you? And I mean, I'm not saying that it's for everybody, like you can get to a good place, but I just think that my human mind wants to continue to learn and be open and expand. And I think that keeps me going anyway, in a lot of ways. So.
Well, great.
It's important.
Well, Adam, we will be sure to put the Athletes Village link so everybody can check that out. And I've really enjoyed it, so I hope they will as well. And thanks for your time today and coming on the show.
Yeah, thanks, Becca. I want to say I listened to your latest podcast,
mm-hmm.
and I really liked what Dr. Roberts had to say.
Mm-hmm.
And it reminded me of the story of Alicia Montano.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you followed that, but it's a pretty interesting conversation that she had just about starting a family while being an athlete. I thought that was a great episode. So
maybe that's the next.
If you haven't listened to that one yet, check it out.
Well, thank you. And maybe that's the next section of the village is moms. And we don't want to exclude. I mean, even dads want to be able to be active in their children's life and compete as an athlete. So maybe that's the next section of the village.
Yeah, there you go. Well, thank you so much for this. It's been fun chatting.
Absolutely. You have a great day, Adam.
You too. Take care.
Bye, Queens. Today's episode is brought to you by yours truly. I'm excited to announce the releasing of my book, Finding Your Sweet Spot in Sport, Avoiding Relative Energy Deficit in Sport, also known as RED-S, by optimizing your energy balance. Be sure to follow me on social media or go to my website, www.beccamccombel.com, to find out when the release date is set and when it'll be on Amazon. Bye, Queens.
For additional information on today's topic and guests, follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Fit for a Queen. And
Hashtag Fit for a Queen.
don't forget to rate us on iTunes. We can't wait for you to join us next time on Fit for a Queen.
Bye, Queens.